All right. So the Pasha, this Pasha is Pasha's Tetzaveh. And in this Pasha, right in the beginning, we received the mitzvah. Moshe Rabbeinu is told by Hashem that he should see to it that Yidden prepare oil for lighting the menorah. And the oil for lighting the menorah, it says, is a very, very pure oil, very special oil. The Gemara says that there are 3 levels of oil, 3 types of oil. And, when you take an olive and you squeeze out an olive, there could be impurities coming out of the olive. But the olive that is perfectly well ripened on the tree, and you then take it, the first squeeze out, it's very pure oil. It doesn't have any impurities. And that is the only oil that is suitable for lighting the menorah. The other oils are all appropriate, all kosher for other things, for mincha, for korbanos, but for lighting the menorah, it has to be this very pure oil. So I want to focus in on this principle because the union of oil, I'm sure you've come across, you heard, you learned. Oil is a very significant element. Just as physically, oil does not mix with any other liquids. If you put oil with water, the oil will just swim up, or anything. You know that it says in Chassidus that wine also has to do with Chassidus, has to do with revealing secrets. Nichnas yayin yotza soid, the Gemara says. When wine comes in, the secrets of the soul come out. But there are deeper secrets that don't come out with wine. And then these deeper secrets are compared to oil. Oil essentially is the essence of everything. And as it says in the Pasha, that how is oil recognized? Oil produces light. What is this relationship, oil with light? Light, even physical light that we are experiencing all the time, really light is a kind of an intangible. You know what intangible means? It's not a physical thing that you can grab hold on. In our intellectual structure, there are 3 madregas, 3 levels. One is compared to water, one is compared to wine, and one is compared to oil. Water, Torah is called water. It is called Torah is called water, mayim. And Torah, it says mayim Yerdim mokim govei lemokim nomuch. Mayim water by nature descend from a higher place to a lower place. They find their, so to speak, their lowest level. This essentially refers to the nigla part of Torah. What is that nigla part of Torah? This is not part of Torah that can be learned by logical process. Everything has a logical structure, has a kasha and a teretz, and the teretz explains the kasha, and the kasha kind of digs into, it's a logical step into the inyan that we're learning. A kasha, huh?
What's a kasha?
A teretz. A kasha is a question, and teretz is an answer. And then with this logical process, we discover the halacha, which is called nigla de Torah. This is the water aspect of Torah. Then there is a deeper in Torah that's called wine. This is when a person, this is in Torah, it's called Rosin de Torah, the secrets of Torah. Now, to learn the water element of Torah, so to speak, the nigla, the simple part of Torah, this is something that does not require extreme sensitivity. If you don't understand the word that I say, please stop me, so I'll find a different word. Because the simple logic is something that can be argued out and can be shown, so to speak, black and white. And you don't need much convincing. You know, this is a contradiction, and this will answer the contradiction. It's a kind of a process that is entirely on the surface. And yes, you need the brain to be able to follow it, but it's actually compelling. You know what compelling means? It kind of proves itself. It's almost physical. Like if you want to set up these tables, it almost fits. There's no other way to set it up, because you can't put one table on top of the other. If this table is standing here, then this table has to be standing here. This table has to be standing here. This is the logic, so to speak, element that is almost self-compelling. Except you can follow it and figure out how this would follow, how this would work out. Whereas, to go to the deeper element of Torah, which is called wine, for that, one has to be much more open inside, much more sensitive to sense that there is something that is implied. You know what implied means? Like a remes, implied. It's not so clear. Like, I'll give you an example, which we mention all the time. Not in this context, but the internet we mention all the time. When it says when Hashem created the world, b'choshech, there was perfect darkness. Choshech al pnei zhoim. There was darkness. And then it says, Vayomer Elokim mihi oir, and Hashem said, let there be oir, let there be light. Vayihi oir, and there was light. And then it says, Vayar Elokim es ha'oir ki tov, and Hashem saw that the oil was good. Now this, on the surface, seems to be very simple. There was darkness. Then Hashem said there would be light. And then Hashem saw the light was good. So then the Medrash, which I mentioned to you, I believe, recently, the Medrash says on this, that actually there was a very profound revelation that occurred at this moment. That when Hashem first said, let there be light, there was light and darkness, and they were on par. You know what on par means? Of equal significance. And you couldn't tell which one Hashem preferred, darkness to light, or light. When Hashem said, Hashem saw that the oil is good, this told us, this is where the Torah reveals us how Hashem prefers light to darkness. And the Gemara, the Medrash says, what is light and darkness? Darkness represents Maaseh Hoshoy, the deeds of the Rishoy. Light represents Maaseh HaTzadikim, the deed of Tzadikim. And at the point when the Rebbe first created the world, it wasn't clear what was the aim of the world, whether it was Maaseh HaShoyim or Maaseh HaTzadikim. So there's much to speak about it. I speak from time to time about it, and slowly we'll get the clarity of this. But just want to point out that to recognize, for instance, that darkness represents Maaseh HaShoyim, and light represents Maaseh HaTzadikim. For this you have to have more sensitivity. This is not something that is imperative, that is clear. If you saw darkness, well, there was darkness or light, you would not necessarily say, oh, I know what it is, Tzadikim or Rishoyim. Maybe you would because you learn Chassidus, but otherwise, this is not so obvious. For this you have to be sensitive. Shoyim, as the Gemara says, they work in the dark, Tzadikim work in the light. There's much to speak about it. So for this, one has to open his mind and be more sensitive to what the spiritual element of the mind is, not just the superficial and logical element, but the spiritual element, what one senses coming from his soul. Then he is able to discern, to recognize these finer elements. And even deeper than that, this is called the secrets within the secrets. These are the deeper secrets of Torah. That is compared to oil. And that for that, obviously, you have to be even more sensitive. Actually, the oil, this goes into the soul itself, which we may have a chance to discuss today.
Is wine Kabbalah and oil is Chassidus? Is that what we explained, or is oil?
Yes, it says that Kabbalah is rosin, and Chassidus is rosi de rosin. Right. As the Torah says, that this oil is l'hales neir tomid, it is to bring up, it is to have a light, a candle that sheds light. As I mentioned before, we have these three elements in Torah: water, wine, and oil. Water is the most, I said, is the most obvious, and it is almost something tangible. It's a logical aspect of Torah. wine is not as tangible, but nevertheless one can can sense it in seichel. But oil is something that is sensed only. That's why oil comes out only in form of light. The meaning of light is different than every other aspect in our experience. As I mentioned many times, we have 5 senses. The senses are the different ways by which we become aware of the world around us. The touch, the smell, the taste, the hearing, and the sight. Now, touch is entirely a physical thing. We feel it in our hand. We can't ignore it. We actually feel it in our hand. And if we are not careful, we can hurt ourselves. Taste is a little bit more spiritual. As a matter of fact, not everyone has taste, and taste changes. Some people like one taste, some people like another taste. So taste is already more spiritual than touch. Smell is even more spiritual. Smell is even more refined. But all of these 3, touch, taste, and smell, are all experienced on the physical level. You understand that? This is all experienced by the body, so to speak. Huh? Well, yeah. But then, when you come to hearing, and particularly sight, hearing, we hear the sound, and the sound enters our ear and actually hits, so to speak, the eardrums. But nevertheless, if not for our intelligence and our sensitivity to sound, we would not hear it, wouldn't mean anything. Sound can only be heard by interpretation of the brain. And in sound, we could see that in sound we are actually bringing together many higher and finer faculties. Like in sound, there is a pleasant sound, and there's not pleasant sound. There's what's called a sweet sound, there's music, there's a song, there's a scream. These are all different forms of sound that are identified by our intelligence. So, sound is that level that we are, it hits, so to speak, there is a connection to our physical body because it hits our eardrum. But in order to identify the sound, we have to bring our spiritual koiches, our intelligence, and our emotion. Otherwise, that we would not be able to have any relationship with the sound. But nevertheless, it is not completely removed from the physical because it does hit. There's a sound there's a sound wave that hits the eardrum. Then on top of that, there is sight. And sight we see only because of the light. Now, light also, tired, not feeling good, feeling good, are you feeling well? Light also Just like sound enters our ear, light also enters our eye. That's how we see, because light deflects from the physical object, and it enters our eye. But there's a big difference, and the difference is that sound enters our ear and actually what's called disturbs the eardrum. It makes it shake. There's a physical effect from sound. Did you ever stand in the street sometimes and then some people pass by with a car with loud, that the whole earth trembles? There's in halacha even cases where sound breaks. Sound can break glass. Sound can break. It has a real physical effect. Whereas light does not have that. So light does enter our eye, but the way it enters our eye is not because it disturbs our eye. On the contrary, it is because our eye is completely transparent. It does not have any physicality to it. So that light is like an intangible, like a spiritual deflection, almost. It's not a spiritual; it's a physical, but it's the most spiritual on the physical level. It enters our eye without any disturbance, without causing it any kind of tremble, and because the eye is transparent and allows it to come in without any disturbance. This the effect of light is also different than the effect of everything else. Also, a principle which we discuss quite often here, but now that we are in this Pasha, I want to discuss it more conclusively. All other senses, touch, smell, taste, and even hearing, all other senses, we are getting to know, like when we touch an object, and we know that the object is there, this is effectively only knowing the object from our own subjective perspective. You understand what that means? We know it only the way it affects us. I know it's there because it doesn't let my hand to go through. It interferes with my movement. That's all. In other words, one can be completely self-involved, self-indulgent, not care about anything in the world but himself, and yet he will know that there is a table over here. Because the table affects him directly. Whether it is a table or anything else, this is true regarding the physical contact, because there's an actual contact between the object and the hand that touches it. This is true in touch, in smell, in taste. We all know that in taste you can't taste something unless it touches your palate. And even in hearing, also, as we said, we hear things because the sound actually comes and disturbs our eardrums. Although, to identify the different sounds, we have to use already our intelligence. So this is already more on the spiritual level. But nevertheless, this is like the combination, this is like the intermediate between the spiritual, purely spiritual, and physical. So that in all of these things, in all of these cases, in all of these cases, a person is actually, even though he knows the world, but he knows the world from his own perspective. So he is not involved in finding out, in relating to a truth, to an absolute, to something objective, to reality itself. So everything that a person does on the basis of these four elements, he's essentially doing from his own perspective, from his own interest. Because there is no real external reality. Do you follow what I'm saying? A person can let's say, a person can conduct business honestly. Conducting business honestly, as we mentioned many times, could mean different things, and we'll just mention two different approaches, two different aspects. Like we said all the time, that the world also recognizes that you should not steal from your neighbor. Why? Because if you steal from your neighbor will steal from you. So this is not a real recognition of some kind of a value, some kind of a truth in the world. This is really being self-indulgent, self-involved. It's for your own benefit. So there is no real recognition of the truth, recognition of Avodas Hashem. There's no real revelation, experience of nefesh, of a living thing that knows, that only wants to know the truth. This is true in all of the other of the four elements, the four levels of cognizance. When it comes to sight, this we pointed out many times. When it comes to sight, this is a different category. Like we mentioned many times in the past, that the halacha is that somebody who is, God forbid, sightless, cannot see, he is potter from all the mitzvahs. He's potter from doing mitzvahs. It doesn't mean that he cannot do mitzvahs, but essentially he doesn't have that element of the full accomplishment of mitzvahs. And as the Gemara says, he doesn't have a Yetzer Hara. That's great, right? No, it's terrible. He doesn't have a Yetzer Hara. Not because he's so pure, but because there is no real world in which he lives. And therefore there is no real enticement. He lives in his own mind. It's a very painful thing to contemplate. But that's what it is. Because sight not only makes you know the various things, but sight actually opens a person up to a different reality than himself. He knows that there is really a reality outside. And only through sight do we truly perceive that there's a real world and that there is a creator to the world. This element we said before that even in hearing, when we hear things and we hear a pleasant music, this is by connecting our hearing to deeper qualities in the person, to intelligence and different qualities in the person. That's even in hearing. But in sight, to be able to fully experience the element of sight, of light, stupid guy. He doesn't know that I daven mincha. But a light, for that we actually need, and we actually, so to speak, relate to a much deeper element in our soul. And that is the element that's called oil. I want to explain. This is the deeper thing. Sorry?
You know, the smell is the deepest, connects like to the essence.
Smell is a physical experience. Sight is not even a physical experience. Sight is that which I'll explain in a moment. I want to.
Is it only with sight that someone's part of the mitzvah?
I'm sorry, only with sight, yes. The halacha is that somebody who is Rahman in Islam, God forbid, very sick, very weak, very sick, and he is has all kinds of problems, whether it's physical problems, financial problems, where he's still not absolved, not you're not free from doing all the mitzvahs, even Talmud Torah. But with sight, this is something else. He's part of all the mitzvahs. The Indian, the principle of Yiddishkeit, everybody understands, knows. The principle of Yiddishkeit is to know Hashem, to know that the world was created by Hashem. And the most important few words that we say every day is Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, to recognize the presence of Hashem. Now, we all say it, and we all say we believe it. But how do we have the ability to do that when we never saw him? We only see the world. So we produce it, so to speak, logically. We say, oh, but the Hashgacha Protis. You know what I saw, when I experienced. I almost missed my plane, but then the plane was delayed, and therefore I got on the plane. Okay, that's Hashgacha Pratis. But this is all, so to speak, indirect aspects. In order to be able to so to speak, do Avodas Hashem, that you say Baruch Ato Hashem. Baruch Ato means you, in first person or the second person directly. How do you say Baruch Ato? If you don't have a direct recognition of it. In Shem and Esra, we stand in Shem and Esra and we say all the brachas Baruch Ato Hashem. We speak directly to Hashem. How do we speak directly to Hashem if we never saw him and we only know the word? What is the answer? The answer is that, in fact, deeper in our intelligence, we do possess that element, that knowledge, where we know the truth of Hashem, not as a result of some kind of experience. Like in hearing, we know things because something hit our eardrums. Something caused us to know. not as a result of any experience. But something that we know directly. This is referred to as emunah. Have you ever heard the word emunah? Emunah is also translated as faith, trust. But really emunah is an element in our intelligence, in our soul, whereby we actually know a truth beyond our own experience. We know a truth beyond our own experience. Just as in sight, when we see things, and we say, this thing is really, really there, like we said many times, that sight is more convincing than touch. Because touch is like, I know it because I have proof of it, I touched it, I have proof of it. But sight is not knowing something by proof, it's knowing directly. Not because I felt it, but because I saw him himself. I have no proof. This is him. This is this. So sight is that which gives us a direct knowledge of things. This ability to have direct knowledge of things, this connects to the deepest elements in our soul. What is this element of soul? This is called oil. What is the oil? Oil is the pure element that, as we said, does not mix with anything. Does not mix with anything. Does not need any proof from outside of its existence. It's just the reality itself. And this oil, how does it manifest itself? How do we get to know it? This is through the element of light. Light, as we said before, even though it shines up, it lights everything, but it's not a tangible thing. It's a spiritual thing. The point of this whole discussion is for us to reflect and recognize that yes, indeed, there are many different levels in our experience. And we can do things for many different reasons. For personal reasons, for gain, for experience, for all kinds of different phenomena, all kinds of different causes. What's the matter? I want to use some kind of an analogy to point out the reality that exists in our soul. Normally, we look at a person, the person goes out, let's say, a young person goes out to work, goes out to business, and you say, oh, this guy has got an idea, he's going to be successful, he's going to be rich, he's going to accomplish such and such, he's going to be a somebody. And this hope of becoming a somebody, this is what kind of motivates him to do all of these things. in our in the generation before ours, just right after the Holocaust. The Holocaust, you all know, was a devastating thing to the Jewish people. Not only did it destroy 1/3 of our people, but it was in the most savage, brutal way that imaginable, beyond imagination. It actually crushed, so to speak, every less spirit that can possibly be left in a person. So the people who survived it were left completely spiritless. You cannot say that these people were sitting there and waiting for the moment when they're going to be liberated so that they can go and become a somebody. That didn't exist in them at all. There was no somebody there. There was nobody left. And yet, we had this tremendous miracle that as soon as they were liberated, immediately, in a very, almost within days, they already began to catch themselves and began to decide, okay, let's rebuild our lives. Let's rebuild our lives. Like, can you imagine? Just imagine a very simple situation. A person living a lifetime, building a business. And he was successful. He built a whole big business. And then something happened, and the business went up in flames. And he was left empty, completely without anything. Here he had the successful business, everything was going fine, and all of a sudden he was left with nothing. So now he loses spirit, he loses interest in doing anything. He's like despondent, giving up. If that is true in a normal situation, of course, a fire is not a normal situation, but still it's something which happens under normal circumstances. The Eden that survived the Holocaust, there was not a normal thing. There was a complete devastation of the human presence, and yet they were able to recoup and rebuild their lives. And how did this happen? Where did they have this insight, this strength to do that? Clearly, this was not based on anything external. This was not based on any of anything logical. There was no logical way of explaining it. This was clear testimony that there is a spirit, a neshama in a person that is eternal, that cannot die, that cannot be killed. And it is due to this truth that exists in a person, that he knows internally that there is an absolute truth. It is because of this he is able to actually process and recognize truth in the world. The effect of light, as I've mentioned many times, the effect of light that allows us to see the reality of the world, that there is a real world and therefore there's a real creator. This is due to the fact that we have a real soul. So this is not, so to speak, an intelligence that comes as a result of logic, as a result of arguments, but this is a direct recognition of the truth. I hope I have some, you follow this? This direct recognition of the truth, this is the most precious thing that we have. You have to understand, this is what's called the oil in the soul and the oil in the human being. This is that which carries a person through every kind of difficulty. Does not allow him to extinguish his light and to give up. This is what will carry him through under all circumstances and will always rise above, just like oil rises above all problem, all other elements. This will raise a person above all problems. He will always be able to see beyond the problems, beyond difficulties. It is my belief that to recognize this principle and to always remind ourselves and be in touch with this insight is of utmost importance. To take it in very simple terms. You wake up in the morning and you don't have any good reason to get up. You don't have the real impetus, something pushing you. What am I going to accomplish today? What you can be missing is all the other elements, the touch, the smell, the taste, and the hearing. But nevertheless, the reality of the world itself, that cannot never be taken away from you. That which comes through the oil, to the light, to the sight. And we can always find within ourselves that point of truth that says very simply, okay, I don't have a real good reason to get up. I don't have nothing is pressing me, or I'm unhappy. I don't like this guy. I don't like this guy. All kinds of different things. I hate to go down Bismillah. I'm going to have to meet up with this guy, and I just don't want to be there. Whatever it is, I mean, as big a group that we have over here, we always have those elements, those moments that we are unhappy with. But that's the nature of the Israel. That's the nature of human development. But one thing you must always remember: none of this supersedes the real sense of life that we have. I'm not going to give up, so to speak. I cannot possibly forfeit. You know what forfeit? Give up. To give up. You know, just the reality of living. The reality of getting up and doing and participating in life, participating in God's world, because of any of these discomforts, of any of these frustrations and angers. We have the ability and we have this demand and the obligation to ourselves and to our souls and to our neighbors to always be able to rise above any difficulty that's in our way. Because of this pure oil that's emanating constantly from our soul, that lets us see, like I said, what we see with the eye. What we see with the eye is not processed, not like something is hitting our eye. We see the eye, this is the truth itself, the pure truth. This is something which touches our very soul. It's not that something that we need to explain. Why do I need to do this? Why is this beneficial? Nothing. There's no whys. This is just the reality that the Rebbe created. I don't need a reason for it. This element is really a primary element in every human being. We're not children of this. We have to understand. This is a primary element in every human being. We can be selfish, we can have self-interest, we can be angry, we can be happy, we can be comfortable, not comfortable, all kinds of different things. They're all justified complaints and all justified happiness. But the primary element, that there is an indestructible element in our soul and in our being, in our interest in life. And this is and this will always be there and always be pursued, regardless of what the circumstance is really a very important thing to recognize. So that, as a result of that, of course, this opens up all other gates in life. But the first thing is this oil that rises above everything, and that produces light. And in light, we can see that this is a real world, a real, not worldly per se, and that this is a reality that is created by a real God. This is not something which is just arbitrary, just circumstantial. Like the Alter Rebbe, the Shulchan Aruch says, if you learn right in the beginning of the Shulchan Aruch, that the first thing that a person wakes up and the person thinks about is recognizes that the Rebbe brought back light into the world, he rejuvenated the world, and therefore he sees the Rebbe is standing there by him, and he is urging him, okay, get up and come and do your thing. This is what waking up in the morning is. Along with this obvious and simple benefit, this Indian has to be recognized all the time. As I said, nothing should face a person to the point where I cannot go here, I cannot be here, but this annoys me, this annoys me. We have to be able to rise above every situation. We cannot be affected by whatever annoys us to the point where I have to run away. I'm talking about normal situations. As I said, we have a huge group of people, all kinds of varieties, like it says, 70 nations, right? We live here in Yeshiva Baruch Hashem, all amongst Eden, who are primarily here for one and the same purpose, for one and the same reasons. And we have different natures and different backgrounds and different attitudes, different mannerisms. Like the Gemara says, "Ein deyesehem shovis, ein parzufehem shovis." They don't. No people. Two people look alike. No two people think alike. We have to be able to rise above all of that and see through and see that we are actually all representing the similar truth, the similar nekudas or emes. And this is where we meet. And whether or not we meet, we have to be able to continue on and do our own thing. This is what the Pasuk says, that in order to produce light there has to be oil, not just plain oil. It has to be pure oil that comes directly from the pure elements of the neshama, untainted. Untainted means that I'm not asking myself, why should I do this? And what benefit is there in it? This is all in the form of logic, in the form of, you could water or even wine. But by oil, there is no logic. There's no need for logic. There's no whys. Because in oil, you recognize the truth itself directly, and this is all that you need. This is the source of all motivations. If I go through a day, and I tried, I was disappointed in Gemara, I didn't understand it. I was disappointed in Chassidus, I didn't understand it. I was disappointed in the dining room because the guy sat in my place. Whatever else. The whole day was just one big disappointment. And at night, my roommate snored on top of it all. Okay? So this is, these are all things that pile up, and I can't stand my own shadow. I can't stand living. I lived another day in God's world. So all of these things, are valid annoyances. But I was able to see, even in one moment, I was able to see an element of truth. When I said Shema Yisrael, I meant it. Anything. All of these annoyances fade away. And it was all worth it just to have that moment of truth. And with that moment of truth, I go and face the next day. This is the principle of life. And in reality, only with this principle can we go through any day, even a successful day. Because even if you're successful, the Yetzer Hara will always come and say, look at this, but this guy got better than you. It's never, so to speak, the Gemara says a person is never satisfied. And as soon as he's not satisfied, he's already annoyed, and he gets angry. And goes right into the next step is an argument. We have to, and this is the principle which carries us through life. This is the principle behind all successes. Without that, success means absolutely nothing. Did you find anyone who is successful who is not jealous of the next guy? I don't think such thing exists. So, my dear friends, I want you to understand what you possess, what we possess inside our mind, inside our soul, inside our intelligence, is the purest and the deepest element possible. We possess a real cognizance of godliness that allows us to understand light Even on a physical level, I point out the light. This is to understand light, understand that which is the intangible, and to appreciate it. That is the place. That is what we have to pursue. This is the source of our strength. And while we have to drink water and drink wine occasionally, but we have to also remember the ultimate reality.
Rabbi Paltiel?
And if the water doesn't taste so good, so be it. Yes?
Would you say that all the taste, smell, touch, and sight, sound, not sights, the sounds, are there to sort of like express the light through expression, and you should use that in order to, you should use the sights, sounds, and every smells, taste in order to express the light, to understand the light?
That is really, this needs to be explained, all that, but really that is the case. Really, that is the case.
Okay.
I'll give you a very simple example. This is from Halacha. That Shabbos, we have to light Shabbos candles. The reason the Shulchan Aruch says we have to light Shabbos candles is in order to have light at the table when you eat. When you eat. Kush it. Why must you have light when you eat? You can feel your food, you can know where it is. You must have light in order to enjoy the food. Now, how do you enjoy the food? By taste, right? It's an interesting thing, though. You can have the best tasting food. If you don't see it, you don't enjoy it. It's not real. When you see it, it's real, and then you can enjoy the taste. If you don't see it, then it's not real. So then you're imagining that you have food in your mouth. And it's tasty. So this is what's called artificial flavoring. So, this is the statement, this is the halacha. You may argue, well, I can eat in the darkness, and if you give me a good piece of ice cream, I can enjoy it in the dark. That is true only because, Baruch Hashem, we're all sighted. We all see. You have seen before. So you can correlate it to having seen it. But sight is the big thing. And even on the best of circumstances, to actually see it is the cause, is a prerequisite to real enjoyment. So as we're saying, the other four senses are actually dependent for full appreciation on sight.
For you to relate to it.
Yeah, for full appreciation. So it's not helpful that we should have clear sight, pure sight, and never allow ourselves to be fazed by any trivial annoyances. Really, we are very important people here. We are God's people. We have very important things to accomplish. We have a big future in duty in life. We can't waste our energy, waste our intelligence, our emotions on insignificant and stupid little things. Pardon me for the expression. I don't mean to insult anyone. And the Gemara says there's an interesting principle with light. Neir le'echad, neir le'meya. One candle can give light for one person, and when there's 100 people, they benefit from the same light without any increase. Light is something which is extremely easy to share. And we all benefit from the same light. So nobody can take away light from you. We are benefiting together, and we should understand. We should be encouraged and see to it that we should help other people to see with the same light that we see. This is the real life. This is what Jewish life is about.
So also, like, when we get distracted by like noises, tastes, and smells and stuff, we should end up seeing it through the perspective of the light, right?
Well, we should try to eliminate these annoying things, but not that they should destroy and disturb us. They should stop us from pursuing what we need to pursue.
Right, we should use it for what they're meant for, to see the light in the right perspective.
If we can, sure.
And if not, we just push them off to the side.
Yeah. The main thing is that should not phase us. That should not. I know that sometimes, and there could be something annoying. Like when this guy starts banging on my head, I really can't talk. But it doesn't mean that I'm going to say, okay, this guy is banging, therefore, forget it, right? That doesn't work that way.
Rabbi, you're lucky. You just turn them off.
That's right. I have Baruch Hashem 10 assistants who are willing to do it for me. But the point is, yes, it's annoying, and I know it's annoying. I'm not saying that nothing should be annoying. Nothing is annoying. Yes, it could be annoying things. But it does not stop our progress. That's the important thing. I still have it doesn't cancel out who I am or what I need to do. And even the guy who annoys me also has redeeming factors. There was once somebody from a Satmar group, and the Satmars, now Baruch Hashem, things have straightened out a lot, but there was a time that the Satmars really hated Lubavitch. I know for what reason, you don't need reason to hate. Sometimes we find that we need reason to love, but hate is something that comes natural at once. Lord God forbid. So there was a Satmar Yaman who was in by the oil. This was already by the oil. This was right after Gimel Tammuz. So somebody asked him, "What are you doing over here?" And he was not known to be a lover of Lubavitch, all of a sudden, what are you doing over here? So he says, "Look, I tell you, I overheard my kid talking to a Lubavitcher kid. My kid said to the Lubavitcher kid, my tate hates you, Rebbe." So the Lubavitcher kid answered him, my Rebbe loves you, tate. So when I heard that, he says, that took the rug from under my feet. That is the reality. Okay? And we have to remember it about every youth. Okay. That's lacha.